My husband agreed to inseminate his ex because she didn't want to have children with anyone else. My husband sat me down and told me he had agreed to father a child with his ex. She didn't want kids with anyone else, and he felt it was the right thing to do. He made the decision without me, without a conversation, as if our marriage didn't matter. He said it wasn't about love or rekindling anything from their past. She simply wanted a child, and he was the only person she trusted for that. He framed it as a favor, something that wouldn't affect our marriage. It was just biology, just genetics, nothing more. He had already agreed before even telling me. He wasn't asking for my opinion. He was informing me. He had made a life-altering decision without considering how it would impact me, our marriage, or our future. I asked if he understood what this meant. If he realized that having a child, no matter how detached he claimed to be, would tie him to her forever. He insisted it was just a donation, nothing emotional, nothing that would change our life together. She wanted to raise the child alone. There would be no co-parenting, no weekends away, no shared custody. Just his name on the birth certificate and an occasional update if he wanted one. But it wasn't just that. It was betrayal, not in the usual sense, but in a way that felt worse. He had made a commitment to another woman, prioritized her needs over our marriage, and expected me to accept it as if it were nothing. Before I married my husband, I already knew about his ex-wife. Their relationship had lasted nearly a decade, 3 of those years spent in marriage, but it had been anything but stable. She controlled every aspect of his life, dictated his choices, and isolated him from his friends. The fight started small: where to live, how to spend money, but they grew into something bigger. She accused him of being selfish, of not loving her enough, of not being fully committed. When he finally refused to bend to her demands, she was the one who left, claiming he had failed her. Even after their divorce, she refused to move on. At first, she used excuses, unfinished paperwork, belongings left behind, just to keep a line of communication open. When those ran out, she started reaching out under the pretense of friendship, making it seem like she just wanted to check in. But the messages were never innocent. She reminisced about their past, tried to guilt him, hinted that they had something no one else could understand. When he met me, it got worse. She called him late at night, claiming she was struggling. She showed up at places she knew he'd be, acting surprised to see him. When that didn't work, she focused on me. She messaged me, warning me that marrying him would be a mistake. She said I didn't know the real him, that he always ran from responsibility. She left a letter on my car, telling me I was ruining his life. She even tried to convince his friends that I was controlling him, that I was the reason he had cut her off, that I didn't let it scare me away. I trusted him, and he reassured me that he was done with her. He blocked her, stopped responding, and over time, she disappeared. For years, she was nothing more than a name from his past. Now, she was back, asking him to father her child. And without hesitation, he had said yes. I asked him how this even started. How did a woman he cut off years ago suddenly convince him to have a child with her? He told me she reached out months ago. At first, it was just small talk, catching up, but then she told him she had decided to have a baby, his baby. She didn't want to go through dating, didn't want another man involved, didn't trust anyone else. She told him he was the only person she could ever imagine as the father of her child. She wasn't asking him to co-parent, just to help her. No legal responsibility, no involvement, just a biological connection. According to her, it was nothing more than a practical decision. Instead of shutting it down, he listened. He let her explain, let her make her case. She played on their past, their history, the fact that they had once planned to have kids together. She reminded him that she never wanted to have a child with anyone else, only him. That was what convinced him. Not my feelings, not our marriage, not the life we built together. I asked if he ever planned on telling me before he went through with it. He hesitated, which told me everything. He was going to do it behind my back. He thought it was his choice alone, something that didn't concern me. But it did concern me. This wasn't just a donation. It wasn't some detached medical procedure. No matter how much he tried to downplay it, this tied him to her permanently. There would always be a child out there, his child, her child, that she could use as a reason to stay in his life. That I asked if he even thought about how this would affect me, how it would affect us. He insisted it didn't change anything between us, that I was overreacting. But that was easy for him to say. He wasn't the one being blindsided. He wasn't the one being forced to accept that his marriage had never been his priority. The worst part? He had already agreed. It wasn't a discussion. It was a fact. The realization set in that he had already made his choice. He agreed to give his ex a child without asking me, without considering what it would do to our marriage. He saw nothing wrong with it. He thought it was just a simple decision, something that had no effect on our life together. Anger took over. I asked him why he thought this was acceptable. He repeated the same explanation, that it was not about love, that he was only helping her, that it would not involve him beyond biology. He acted as if I was overreacting, as if my feelings on the matter did not count. This was not just about a child. It was about the fact that he had let her back into his life after everything she had done. She had spent years interfering in his relationships, trying to stop our marriage, trying to make me feel like I did not belong with him. She had manipulated him before, and now she had convinced him to do this. I reminded him of the things she had done. The messages she sent me, telling me I would never be enough for him. The way she tried to turn his friends against me. The way she showed up where we were, trying to make herself seem like she was still important to him. She had not changed. She had waited for the right moment to pull him back in, and he had allowed it. He showed no regret. He only looked frustrated that I was upset. He did not see the damage he had caused. He did not see how this destroyed everything between us. There was no way to fix it. The trust was gone. The marriage we had built no longer existed. He had made a decision that could not be undone, and now I had to make mine. I walked out. Leaving the house did not bring relief. The weight of what had just happened followed me. I had walked away from my husband, from the life we built, because he had made a decision that left no room for me. There was no way to undo it. He had agreed to something permanent, something that would always tie him to her. I drove without a destination, my hands gripping the wheel, my mind replaying everything. The way he had spoken so casually, as if this was not a betrayal. The way he had dismissed my reaction, making it seem like I was the one being unreasonable. He had not begged me to stay. He had not shown any real remorse. He had made it clear that, to him, this was the right thing to do, no matter how much it hurt me. I thought about the years we had spent together, the plans we had made. We had talked about having children, but never on someone else's terms. We had built a life based on trust and partnership, but in the end, he had decided something without me, something that would affect everything. The messages started coming in. First from him, asking where I had gone, telling me to come back so we could talk properly. Then from mutual friends, confused, asking if something had happened. I ignored them. There was nothing to explain. He had made his choice. Now I had to make mine. I found myself outside a friend's apartment. Someone who had warned me about his ex from the beginning, someone who had always seen through her games. When she opened the door, I did not have to say anything. She already knew something was wrong. I walked inside, sat down, and realized I had nowhere else to go. This was the beginning of something I had not prepared for. A life without the man I thought I would spend forever with. The first night away from home felt empty. I sat in my friend's apartment, trying to process everything. Nothing felt real. My phone buzzed repeatedly, but I refused to look. I knew it would be him, still trying to justify what he had done, still acting like this was something we could just work through. But there was nothing to work through. He had made his decision. He had agreed to father a child with his ex, knowing exactly who she was and what she had done to our relationship. He had hidden it from me, planned to go through with it without ever telling me. He expected me to accept it, to live with it, to pretend it didn't change anything. I couldn't. I forced myself to think logically. There was no undoing this. Even if he suddenly changed his mind, the damage was done. He had shown me that my opinion didn't matter to him, that our marriage was not his priority. There was no way to go back to how things were before. The next morning, I woke up to even more messages. A long one from him, saying he didn't understand why I was making this such a big issue. That he still loved me, that this didn't have to change anything between us. That I was overreacting. I blocked his number. Then came messages from others, his friends, our mutual friends, even one of his family members. Some were neutral, asking if we had fought. Others were less kind, saying I was being unfair, that I was ruining a good marriage over something small. Something small. A decision that would connect him to his ex forever. A betrayal of trust. A complete dismissal of my feelings. I ignored them all. Then, hours later, a message from someone I never expected. His ex. She had sent me a short, smug message, pretending to be concerned, asking if I was doing okay, and saying she never meant to cause problems. I stared at the screen, feeling a new wave of anger. She knew exactly what she was doing. She had never let go, and now she had won. He had given her exactly what she wanted, and she wanted me to know it. I deleted the message without responding. It was time to start preparing for what came next. A separation. A divorce. A life without him. The reality of ending a marriage was different from just walking out of the house. There were legal steps to take, financial matters to sort out, and the painful process of unraveling a life that had once felt permanent. I hadn't spoken to him since I left. Blocking his number wasn't just about avoiding him. It was about protecting myself from the manipulation I knew would come. I spent the next few days gathering my thoughts, going over everything. There was nothing to save. Even if he begged, even if he promised to back out of the arrangement with his ex, it wouldn't matter. The fact that he had made this decision without me meant our marriage had already ended before I even walked away. When I finally called a lawyer, it felt like a formality. I explained the situation in short, factual statements. There was no infidelity, no abuse, just a betrayal of trust so deep that there was no way forward. The lawyer asked if I wanted to try mediation, if I wanted to sit down and discuss things before filing. I said no. There was nothing left to discuss. Meanwhile, mutual friends kept reaching out. Some asked if I was okay. Others tried to convince me to talk to him, to work things out. A few outright told me I was throwing away a marriage over something that wasn't even cheating. But it was a betrayal. He had dismissed my feelings. He had put his ex above me. He had decided that a lifelong connection to another woman, his ex-wife, was something I should just accept. That wasn't something I could ever forgive. Then, another message came through. This time from his family. His sister. She was the only person from his side who had ever truly liked me. Unlike the others, she didn't try to convince me to go back. She simply said she understood why I left. That she had always suspected his ex would find a way back into his life. That I deserved better. It was the first message that didn't make me feel like I had to defend myself. Then came the final attempt from him. An email. It was long, filled with everything I expected. He never meant to hurt me. He still loved me. He wanted me to come home so we could fix this. He said he had made a mistake, but still believed what he was doing was right. He didn't regret saying yes to his ex. He only regretted that I had reacted this way. That was all I needed to see. There was no apology, no real understanding of why this had destroyed everything. He still believed I should have accepted it. That my reaction was the problem, not his decision. I didn't respond. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer. This was over. Filing for divorce felt like closing a door that should have never been left open. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. He had shown me exactly where I stood in his life, and I refused to be the woman who accepted it. The legal process began. My lawyer handled most of it, drafting the papers and preparing for what would come next. There was no fight over assets, no complicated battles, just the simple fact that our marriage was over. I had left him everything in the house. I didn't want reminders. I didn't want a fresh start that carried pieces of him with it. When he was officially served, he tried again to reach me. Another email, another attempt to explain, but the words were all the same. He believed he had done nothing wrong. He still thought I had overreacted. He still wanted me to come back. I didn't. People around me had their opinions. Some supported me. Others thought I should have given him another chance. A few still insisted that I had thrown away a good man. But a good man doesn't make life-changing decisions without his wife. A good man doesn't let his ex manipulate him into fathering a child and expect his wife to accept it. Months passed, and the papers were finalized. He was no longer my husband. His ex got what she wanted, a child that would always connect her to him. And he got what he deserved, a life where he had to live with the consequences of his choices. As for me, I moved forward. There was no dramatic moment of closure, no final confrontation, just distance. I built a life that no longer included him, one where my choices mattered, where my voice wasn't ignored. One day, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that the baby had been born. He had gone to the hospital, had signed the birth certificate, had done everything his ex had wanted. I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret, because by then, he was nothing to me.